side. He said that in the building. He might not have said it in the Security Council, but he is still here representing that mission.
Scott Heidler, thank you very much. Here in Washington, the U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton said her government is watching the events in Libya with alarm. Earlier, the U.S. president failed to mention the events in Libya in a live speech, but Hillary Clinton did address reporters on the unrest and the crackdown in Libya. She condemned the violence, calling the bloodshed, quote, completely unacceptable.
The United States continues to watch the situation in Libya with alarm. Our thoughts and prayers are with those whose lives have been lost and their loved ones, and we join the international community in strongly condemning the violence, as we've received reports of hundreds killed and many more injured. This bloodshed is completely unacceptable. It is the responsibility of the government of Libya to respect the universal rights of their own people, including their right to free expression and assembly.
Al Jazeera's Rosalind Jordan joins us now for some analysis. So, how do we interpret that statement and indeed the division of labor between the Secretary of State and the President?
Essentially, the State Department is essentially doing all of the speaking on behalf of the U.S. government right now. And when you talk to those at the State Department, notably her press secretary, P.J. Crowley, there is this deference to what the United Nations is doing. And in fact, I raised the question during the daily press briefing, is in fact the Secretary General Ban Ki-moon acting as the interlocutor, as the go-between between the United States, other countries, and the Libyan government. And what Crowley and by extension Mrs. Clinton are saying is that this is the kind of situation where they need to have the international community acting as one, that it is not a matter of what the United States thinks or what the EU thinks or what other African countries think. This is a situation where it's important to have a united voice in order to try to prevent more bloodshed and to try to bring some sort of stability to the country.
Might one factor be that there doesn't seem to be any domestic pressure on the president to be any stronger on Libya, and especially given that he seems to have got by and large a free pass and even praise on how he's handled Egypt and Tunisia, no matter how it's been seen in the rest of the world. Domestically, though, he's okay.
That's because there haven't been any pictures of what's been happening inside Libya, apart from the video that has been sent out via YouTube. This is the kind of situation where without the media being allowed inside Libya to see what is happening for itself and to transmit excuse me, those images, it's impossible.
What about on Capitol Hill, though? We have heard some rumblings about Libya.
We have from, two members of the Foreign Relations Committee. John Kerry is saying we need to perhaps revisit sanctions, perhaps reimpose them. He is calling on oil companies to stop their actions. It's a very critical situation.
Rosalind Jordan, thank you very much. Some Latin American nations have responded to what's unfolding in Libya in the strongest terms, some of them. Al Jazeera has learned that Peru has now suspended all diplomatic ties with Libya. The Chilean government released a statement saying it, quote, expresses its extreme concern for the evolution of the political situation and the use of force in Libya, end quote. Similarly, the Brazilian government, quote, urges the Libyan authorities to take measures so as to preserve the security and the free circulation of foreigners in the country, end quote. Brazil actually has billions of dollars invested in Libya. And in a telephone call to Colonel Gaddafi, Nicaragua's President Daniel Ortega, a longtime ally of Gaddafi, is the only one so far to have expressed his solidarity with the Libyan leader. He said, quote, Libya is again waging a great battle, end quote, to defend the unity of his nation. Ortega adding, it's at difficult times that loyalty and resolve are put to the test, end quote. Venezuela's president, however, Hugo Chavez, a close ally of the Libyan leader in the past, has yet to comment. Al Jazeera's Latin America editor Lucia Newman has more.
Also very interesting that Peru has decided to take the lead in breaking off diplomatic ties with Libya. There really aren't very many ties between both countries, other than the fact that Peru and Libya and many other Latin American countries are members of the non-aligned movement. But clearly President Alan Garcia wants to send a very, very strong message that at least many countries in South America condemn what is going on right now in Libya. We haven't heard anything directly in defense of Colonel Gaddafi from one of his closest allies in the region, and that is President Hugo Chavez of Venezuela, who was there just last October, calling him a valiant gladiator and a revolutionary. But right now, the only thing that Venezuela is saying is that it hopes that the people, and he's saying the people, not the government or the leader of Libya, can find a solution to the troubles that are going on that will respect the integrity of the Libyan people. So very interesting times. I think that everyone is waiting to see what is really going on. It's very difficult, no matter how close they have been in the past, to come out in defense of what is happening in Libya, particularly as even the former Cuban president Fidel Castro says they don't really know with certainty what is going on in that country. And these are countries, left-wing governments that have been allies of Libya, but which also were very, very quick to applaud the uprisings in Tunisia, in Egypt, all that's happening in the Arab world right now, and they simply feel, I'm sure, that they cannot come out in defense of what is happening in Libya right now. And so they are really very much playing a wait-and-see game.
Our Latin America editor Lucia Newman speaking to us a little earlier. The unrest in Libya has helped push the price of crude oil to a 2.5-year high. Libya exports more than 1 million barrels of crude a day, making it one of the world's 20 largest producers. Oil traders have expressed some concern over a disruption in production. Nick Spicer reports from Berlin on the impact of higher oil prices.
The numbers are changing as fast as the events in the Arab world. Western consumers are concerned at gas prices rising as the Tunisian, Egyptian and Libyan peoples rise against their rulers.
No matter what you're pumping these days, diesel, premium or unleaded, you're likely going to be getting an extra dose of market fear, uncertainty and higher prices, dangerous to the global economy and to the world's poor and hungry.
The world produces around 85 million barrels of oil every day. OPEC countries produce around 35% of that. Saudi Arabia pumps out just over 1/10 of the total number. Libya sends 85% of its oil to Europe, but it produces only 2% of global output. Still, the events in Libya could produce a dramatic change in the oil numbers if there's a political domino effect.
It might go to the Persian Gulf. It might affect the major producers. The kingpin is Saudi Arabia with 8 million barrels per day oil production, and that is just impossible to substitute, impossible to balance the world oil supply demand if that happens.
One problem, if revolution spreads, could be a slowdown in foreign investment in developing countries, say the analysts.
The weakest and the poorest of the across the planet really do not have the resources to support them when there's a downturn. That is, they cannot self-insure in a meaningful way the way rich countries can. In that sense, they're vulnerable, much more vulnerable to the ups and the downs of the international business cycle.
More possible trouble in the months to come. If gas prices stay high, farmers in the developing world will have to spend more money on gasoline and so less on food for their families. Showing that Libya may not be just a matter for the oil-hungry West, but for the whole world.